Hello and welcome in right now here back to Caden's Weather Center here for a tropical update and a severe weather update. Today's July 31st around 12 p.m. We're going to keep an eye out on several, parts of the Atlantic, possibly for the tropics, but mostly the severe weather threat today, as we are possibly going to see some very, very strong gusty winds with some of these storms later on. A possible derecho could be possible. And if we take a look here at the map, we can clearly see there is an enhanced area right here in this orange area. That means we do have some pretty strong storms that could go through these areas. That's parts of eastern South Dakota, parts of southern Minnesota going in through eastern Nebraska, and majority of that enhanced risk for Iowa. So want to keep an eye out on this very closely here. You can clearly see we have a lot to pay attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. It seems like more of this will probably happen more in the evening time. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out on this, but this is the outlook for the severe weather. And even though, this is the enhanced area, we could still see some pretty big storms down here in the slight area heading all the way down into Kentucky and Tennessee. Something to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours and throughout the rest of the day. So taking a look here at the wind forecast and the wind predictions of what we could be seeing in this black area right here, that's significant to severe wind, possibly reaching over 70 miles an hour. So want to keep an eye out, obviously, on that, on where the storms could be. The red area, some pretty good opportunities for 70 mile an hour wind gusts as well. But even when we're in the yellow, we could still get some pretty strong gusty winds reaching 60 mile an hour, 70 mile an hour. But a possible derecho could be happening today. So want to keep an eye out on that, especially if you live in this red area and the black outline right here. And not just the wind threat. We do have a small tornado, threat for today, but the hail threat is a little bit bigger as well, still in this black line right here. Significant to severe, stretching from parts of Nebraska, going into South Dakota and Minnesota here for the, possible significant to severe for hail. So possible chances for, 2-inch in diameter for hail. Definitely something to be paying attention to very closely. So let's head in right now to the future radar. All right, so let's take a look here at the future radar right now. We're currently watching a pretty big chance for a possibility of some severe weather earlier this morning as well, but heading into probably around the next hour here around 12 p.m. today, storms start to pop up here in parts of southern North Dakota and parts of the northern South Dakota, and then still some storms over here in Illinois going to be pushing into Indiana. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on through, obviously, the morning hours as well. But then we head on over here to around 4 p.m. These storms down here go through Indiana. They start to dissipate a little bit, start to head in a little bit more of unfavorable environment. This is the area we want to keep an eye out on as we go on throughout the rest of the evening here. We could possibly be seeing something pretty interesting start to form here. 6 p.m. today, we can clearly see some of these storms that were down here start to push up to the north and then go into South Dakota here. So this could be our biggest possibility for a wind threat tonight. We could be seeing a little bit of that tonight as well. Then we head back into it. We can see storms starting to pop up in Nebraska, even all the way down to Kansas here. Then we see a little bit more at 9 p.m. This is where we could be seeing some very, very strong gusty winds in this region right here. Same with this storm right here that is heading into Minnesota. So still, a lot of these storms are going to have a lot of gusty winds and definitely some hail with it. Not the biggest tornado threat, once again, but definitely has something to pay attention to. 11 p.m. starts to get a little bit more interesting here because this is where we could be seeing a possible derecho come through. This is where we get, very, very strong winds heading through Iowa here. Then we still have these storms over here in the Minnesota area, Minneapolis. You guys could be getting some storms around 11 p.m., 12 a.m. Eastern time. Then continue on throughout the overnight hours. We can clearly see these storms still continue on, but not as strong. But then these storms continue on pretty strong here going through Iowa. And want to keep an eye out, obviously, on Iowa because, they've been already getting some storms for the past couple days. We're going to keep an eye out on this as we head into 4 a.m. here. We can clearly see that's where our biggest wind threat will be in eastern Iowa going all the way up into southern Minnesota. And this will continue to push off over here to the east. Are we thinking it's going to impact Chicago and parts of Wisconsin? Maybe tomorrow. We could be seeing a little bit of also a severe weather threat as we go into tomorrow as well. And then speaking about tomorrow, we can clearly see not as big as a severe weather threat we're going to have today, but the slight risk here just south of Chicago going in through Indiana, so Indianapolis, Cincinnati, Dayton, Ohio. This is where our slight risk will possibly be here going into tomorrow. Could they expand it maybe a little bit? They could. but it all depends. If the storms are pushing down to the southeast, we're not going to see that most likely. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of hours and see what the Storm Prediction Center does. They can update it, later on today for today's severe weather threat and tomorrow's severe weather threat. So we're going to keep an eye out on that as we go on throughout the next couple of hours. So let's take a look at the tropics really quick. Let's move on away from the severe weather. Maybe, by the way, maybe a weather live stream could be happening later on tonight. We'll definitely have to keep an eye out on that. But taking a look right now here at the tropics, we can clearly see nice tropical waves starting to form off of Africa here. So, will it form into anything? That's a good question, but we'll have to definitely take a look at that. But then heading over here, there's our tropical wave that we're keeping an eye out on. Still going to be pushing over here. The question is, does it form into anything, or where does it exactly go? The National Hurricane Center still a 60% chance of formation in the next 7 days here. Something to be taking a look at. It is definitely looking a lot better than it did yesterday, but it's still very spread out. There's not a closed center or anything, so it's a little bit harder for models to track when there's not a well-defined center on this storm. So taking a look here at the water vapor type, we can clearly see this is our area right here. Just a lot of thunderstorms starting to blow up earlier this morning here, and we can clearly see that right now. Heading through a little bit of the dry air, continuing on right now, but a little bit something to be paying attention to. Still, it is over here. So even though we have some storms starting to blow up over here just north of Puerto Rico, we're still not going to be seeing anything start to form really until it gets in about this region right here. So this thing still has a little bit to continue on before it can form. We'll have to keep an eye out, obviously, on that, and especially with the models, because we could see a bit more of a northern turn, more of a westward push. We'll definitely have to see it. It all depends on that Bermuda high that we've been talking about for the last couple days. It all depends on the Bermuda high. So taking a look at this area of interest right here, we can clearly see that we have a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on throughout, obviously, the next couple of hours. This is 24 to 72 hours out. We can clearly see good possibilities here of a tropical depression forming in the next 72 hours. When does the National Hurricane Center start to up the 48-hour chance? We'll have to definitely take a look at that. But heading into 48 to 96 hours here, the European, obviously still consistent with that right curve there, the recurve before the east coast of Florida, a little bit more, less on what it was saying a couple days ago, really. But pretty good chances that the Euromodel saying a possible tropical depression could form here, but a little bit more of a different scenario now. Not saying a tropical depression could form over here, but the best chances for something to form could be right over here off the east coast of Florida and parts of northern Bahamas here. So the European has definitely been pretty consistent on the track, but obviously the intensity has not been, and usually these models are not good with the intensity. So, we could be seeing something pretty interesting here. Would I say it gets anything above a tropical storm? Probably most likely not. There's not enough favorable environment for it, but it's definitely something to be keeping an eye out on, especially if you live on the east coast of the United States, because not just the east coast, some of the models say on the west coast as well. So a little bit to be paying attention to here, especially if you live in Florida and the Carolinas. We want to keep an eye out on that. So this is earlier this morning's by the National Hurricane Center here, the 7-day development chance here. This is the area right here that we could be anticipating a possible tropical cyclone formation here. Look at how there is that chance for northern and a little bit more of that westward by the National Hurricane Centers. It's very confusing on what these models are saying. We have 3 models going off to the west. We have 3 models going off to the east. A little bit more to be paying attention to, really, with the 7-day development. We're really, when will an invest start to come out of it? Well, maybe when it gets most likely closer to here, we could possibly be seeing an invest, and that would really help us. And if they send a plane out into it, that would really help understand where the storm is going to go. But once again, always this storm's always going to kind of just depend on that high pressure. If there's just like I said yesterday, if there's a break in that high pressure, it's going to pull up to the north here. If it's a stronger one, it'll go a little bit to the west. A little bit to be paying attention to. It's a lot to be paying attention to for Florida and parts of the East Coast now for the Carolinas. So it's something to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of days. Let's take a look here at the forecast models here to end out the video. We're going to pay attention to the GFS model right now. GFS has been very interesting over the past couple of, frames, really, or the last couple of model runs. Right now, we can clearly see this is the area of our tropical wave here. We can clearly see it is over here to the west compared to the European model, bringing it over here to the north. a little bit more of a westward push here, saying that high pressure is pretty strong, not going to pull it up to the north here. So, but taking a look at this starts to bring it up into the northern Gulf here, and then it really gets interesting here with the GFS. But look at this. If this does happen, let's say the GFS is correct, we could be seeing a lot of rain go into especially the west coast of Florida here. This is according to the GFS. But then it continues to continues to magically kind of just, it goes up and then it will go back down, and then eventually it will go back up. It's a little bit of an interesting situation with the GFS model. It has not really been the absolute best model, I would say, with tracking some storms, but I want to take a look at this really quickly. So it does go up, it goes down, and then it goes back up. That's, a little bit more of a normal one. But then we take a look here at the 6Z model that is coming out, or that came out earlier this morning. It stays over the western part of Florida here, of the Panhandle. It stays over. I mean, look at that. It just continues staying over for 24 to 36 hours in that one spot, and then continues to push off over here to the northeast. So really, this would be the worst case scenario. Is it going to happen? Most likely not. Obviously, if something goes into the Gulf of Mexico, it has the possibility for some pretty big storms to form, pretty big hurricanes to form, but this one just seems like it's just staying in one place. It could be a little bit of something interesting to be paying attention to. I would not say it's likely right now at this moment, but we'll have to definitely keep an eye out on it. Then we take a look here at the Euro model. We can clearly see with the Euro model, if we back up just a little bit here, there's that tropical wave right there. Obviously still not very organized according to the European model this morning. Then we continue to watch it very closely. There it is right there. Whoopsies. There we go. Right here in this area, and then gets pulled off to the north. Same thing with the Euro has really been saying over here for the past couple of days. Gets pulled off to the north, but now keeping it a little bit more off to the east here of North Carolina. So not bringing it into North Carolina. Some of the ensembles do bring it into South Carolina and North Carolina, so something to pay attention to, obviously, as we go on, as the storm gets closer, and if it gets a little bit more organized, it'll be a little bit more something to pay attention to. We take a look here at this CMC. Right now it's getting updated here, but taking a look at the 00Z model brings it back over here to the west coast of Florida. So something to pay attention to. We have it kind of follows its track over here, and then will get pulled up and gets pulled to the northeast right here. So a little bit to be paying attention to. It all depends on that high pressure. And then the icon has really been setting on the east coast of Florida over yesterday, really. Now bringing it back over the west coast of Florida here, and then could bring it up the same thing, kind of what the CMC is doing here. Whoopsies. Could do kind of the exact same thing the CMC is doing. So a little bit to be paying attention to as we go on throughout the next couple of days. We're going to keep an eye out on this as it continues on. We've been talking about this for the last couple of days here. So please make sure you are staying in, tuned here. Make sure to follow my X page. It'll be down in the description. But also please make sure you are watching the National Hurricane Center and your storm prediction centers and everything that you need to be paying attention to stay safe during this time with the severe weather and the tropics, especially as we are starting to head into August tomorrow. So a little bit to be paying attention to. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.